Hi, my name is Brandie Paterakis, and I'm the owner of Blue Bee Counseling Services. I'm a mother and wife who is passionate about life and has found joy in helping others improve their mental health. The goal of this podcast is not only to provide enriching entertainment, but to help others in their pathway to have a more fulfilling life. This in no way is a replacement for therapy. Follow us on this journey of mental health awareness. Blue Bee Counseling Services now presents this podcast, Therapist Table Talk. Hi, thanks for joining us for Therapist Table Talk. My name is Brandie Paterakis, and I'm the owner of Blue Bee Counseling Services located in South Jordan, Utah. I am so excited to inform all of you that I have some of my most favorite people here today. I love these people. I've known Sarah for a really long time in other aspects of the world, in some really crazy aspects. If you follow us on Instagram and also on Facebook, you might get a little peek of her wearing some wigs and doing some really funny things. Yeah. That is Sarah. So if not, check us out. You'll love it. But Sarah, will you introduce yourself to us?
Absolutely. My name is Sarah Tolman, and I am currently interning at Blue Bee Counseling. I am a graduate student getting my master's in social work so that I can be a therapist. Yeah. So the goal is to go through my program and learn as much as I can, and then eventually get that LCSW.
This is kind of an exciting day because we have like Sarah who's in the internship, yes, and I'm her mentor. And then we also have somebody who is my mentor, which was Wendy. She helped me out when I was in my bachelor's program, and she is so awesome. Wendy, do you want to say hi to everyone and introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Wendy Reiiman. I have absolutely loved working with Brandie. In any capacity I can find myself working in. I called her today to say, hey, let's go do lunch. And she said, sure, after we do a podcast.
Yeah, so. That's right. And look how cute she looks. I know, it's so fun. Yes, and Wendy has her LCSW and owns her own practice. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
I own with my business partner, Julie Matthews, in Healing Focus Counseling. And we are just off of 90th South in Sandy. And we do outpatient. We work with a lot of people, helping them help themselves, find ways to be the boss of their own thoughts, right?
Yes, which tends to be the theme of today. Whoa. Let's talk about being the boss of your own thoughts today. This is super exciting. I mean, who would have thought we needed to be the boss of our own thoughts? I know. You know what I mean? Like, I guess we were kind of raised in where you just kind of go with emotions and do the thing that you need to do. And then all of a sudden, you kind of go to school. The world starts opening up about mental health. We start learning all sorts of new things about our thoughts, and our minds are blown. And now we have all of these great tips and tricks on how to like combat some of that negative style of thinking or those intrusive thoughts. Even some patterns of OCD and complications with anxiety, depression, negative sense of self. All of those things can be really a hindrance upon our thoughts. And so today we're hoping that we give you something, some beautiful concepts to like, first of all, be aware and understand and be educated on what thoughts are and how they work, and then also what to do about them when they're here. And so one of the number one things that I found out in school that I thought was kind of amazing is, number one, that we have these thoughts, but we're born with negative minds. I did not know that. I'm like, what in the world? That is amazing. We're born with negative minds. So we actually automatically go first to negative style thinking, which is quite understandable. Doesn't that make sense?
Yeah.
And then we have to like pattern ourselves and like devote ourselves to like manipulating that to change it over to more of like a positive style of thinking, which takes effort, practice, and it's not one of those things that we just get to do. It's one of those things that takes time and applied efforts and intention. Exactly.
Well, if you look at so I'm glad that you said that, because if everybody across human history is born with negative minds, what era are we living in right now where, like, be the boss of fill in the blank? Like, this is a movement of you can be the boss of any part of your life. You can come in and control things and make things the way that you want to be them. It's just a very proactive culture that we live in right now, and that hasn't always been the case historically. So did you know that, people? Did you know that you can control your own thoughts, or like
Surprise!
be the boss of your own thoughts? Because I think it's a lot of people maybe aren't aware.
Yes, they aren't aware, and I think it kind of goes back to like being a mother and like what kind of style of parenting was there, right? That can be really helpful. Like my mom was very great at being like, oh, you're sad. Let's talk about that emotion. Let's understand it. Let's go into it. Like, or, change that thought. Change that thought. You need, you don't have to think that way. You can think differently. And so because I had that mentor as a mother that taught me those things, that opened up an ability for me at a lot younger age to like transpire over to more positive ways of thinking or solution focused, like a solution focused base where I can like come to terms with my own issues and my own thoughts so that I can do something different. And it's not that we're bad moms if we don't. We just didn't know how, or we weren't taught how to do it. And so now this is a great thing. You're here today. Yay! We're all learning.
Yep.
And so let's take a moment to dive into intrusive thinking and how our thoughts like redirect us in ways that can cause negative complications for our world around us. Okay, there's a couple of things here. Let's talk about them. Intrusive thoughts.
Yes.
What do you guys think about intrusive thoughts? Now they say there's a difference. There's intrusive thoughts, which really can be anything, just something that comes in the way. It might not even be negative. Well, it might not be helpful.
The imagery is pretty powerful because intrusive, intruder, like I'm picturing somebody in all black and a ski mask hopping through my mind window. Like, are you seeing that? Is that what you?
Yeah, that's
intrusive.
Funny.
They're diving. It's coming in, and you don't want it, and you're not ready for it. And why are you here? Intrusive thought. Why are you here?
So the burglar,
intruder, criminal.
I've done a lot of studying with Dr. Daniel Reimann of the Reimann clinics, and he uses the term automatic negative thoughts, ants. And so I always say, imagine ourselves at a picnic, and I've put my blanket out and I put my food on, and then all of a sudden I realize, oh, I'm on an anthill, and all these ants start crawling in. Would I just sit there and say, hey, let's have a picnic together, ants? Or would I say, oh, no, and I put my foot up, I shake the blanket, and I find another spot. And so those automatic negative thoughts, sometimes just being able to shake them off and find another way. And it's very much, if you can name it, you can tame it type of a mentality. Like you said, sometimes we don't even know we're doing it. But if we can recognize what our automatic negative thoughts are. I know with my practice, I have a list of like 40. I have a sheet that has like 12 on them, and then I have another sheet that has like 40 on them. And they're known for being automatic negative thoughts or thinking errors. And we just kind of go through and we dissect, unpack each of those automatic negative thoughts and which ones apply to me.
Yes.
The ones that apply to me, you guys may have no problem with, right?
Yeah, right.
But recognize, oh my gosh, that one is mine. I do that one all the time. And then when it starts happening, you can say, oh, no, that's just an ant. Shake it off. You know?
I'm like floored by that imagery because I am a big imagery person. And where initially I was like, the intruder climbing in the window, busting in the door. Ants are like, they're slow and they're crawling. And you don't always hear them coming. But suddenly they're on your picnic blanket. And that's a lot of the ways that intrusive thoughts can come that you just... How did this even get in my mind? I don't know, but here it is, and it came slowly and quietly. And
I like the fact that, one ant isn't a problem. It's when they become like hundreds of ants, and the ant hill is there, and then having to that's when it becomes a little bit harder.
Absolutely.
We freak out just a little bit more inside. And I also like the imagery of the fact that sometimes they're little ants that we can shake off, and sometimes they are full-on burglars.
Yeah.
They
can come different ways.
Oh, yeah.
And do different things. We could go into ants. All the kinds.
Kind of like that imagery of a mosquito. Mosquito's just tiny and little, but when it's sitting right there in your ear, buzzing, it can just feel like the world is...
absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
So,
for sure.
Yeah, one little ant can just... That perseveration,
that
continuation, that rumination can just kind of control us. So recognizing them first. Which ones... haunt you, each of us individually, and then, okay, now what do we want to do with it?
I love this. So let's take a moment here and let's find those thoughts that kind of have been plaguing us. You at home, I want you just to kind of, as you're driving your car or relaxing or doing your laundry, because of course we're always listening to podcasts while we're doing things as mothers most of the time, or just any one of you, just take a moment and think about those intrusive thoughts or those thoughts that are like ants that can kind of get there. Are they full-on burglars that are coming into our, what did you call it, the mind space window? Or something.
What did I say?
That was amazing.
Whatever spectacular. I don't know.
It was. Okay. And so find those ones that are kind of there, just so that right now in this moment, you have some sort of awareness that you're leaving with. And the awareness is that you're recognizing that these are yours, just like what Wendy said. That one is mine. And I recognize it because it comes and knocks on my door all the time. You know, and sometimes for me, I like to tell my clients, like, hey, are we going to like open that door and let that thought in? Because if we let that thought in and it is a burglar or it's a big old monster and we let that thought in, what is it going to do? Is it going to sit on the chair? Is it going to bring you food? Is it going to make it all nice? Or is it going to be destructive and destroy? It's like, hoarders in a house. Yeah. You know, it's going to start collecting. It's going to bring all of its friends in and just sit and destroy. Or do we open the door cautiously and carefully because we kind of know that knock, right? We know that knock. So we have like a little peep window and we look in and we're like, oh yeah, no, we don't bring you in here. Like you're not invited. Yeah. We're going to let you out. And sometimes this imagery can be helpful. I've used it quite a few times in my office, not only with my office, but with my own kids, with myself, of presenting some sort of imagery that can help me say, ooh, you're knocking on my door, I'm not letting you in. Or you're the ants on that blanket. Are you just one or is there 500 right now? Am I on a hill, right? An ant hill? And so then what do we do with those once we get them, right? Yeah. And sometimes it can just be as simple as saying, I'm not letting you in. You don't get to be here. Like, and then we distract ourselves and we get out. Yeah. Right? And the beautiful piece of like distraction, right? Absolutely.
Sometimes I invite them. I says, oh, it's you again. Okay, what do you want to tell me today? What is it that we're trying, because that which we resist persists. And I often use the imagery of I have grandchildren, right? And the grandchildren, grandma, 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 and I'm still on the phone or doing something else and I ignore. So what happens? Grandma, right? Yeah. And it just gets louder and louder. But if I turn to them and say, hey, it's okay. What can grandma finish her call and then I'll come and find you? And then they're like, oh, okay. Well, if I do the same thing with my automatic negative thought or my thinking errors, they tend to have the ability to lose some power. And they're like, oh, good. Okay, I see you, I hear you. And a lot of times, like if it's a heartbreaking negative thought that just breaks my heart, sometimes I'll even be intentional by putting my hands over my heart and I say, I feel you, I hear you. What are we trying to say today? And there's not a right or a wrong. It's finding what works for you. Yes. I am very that which I resist persists. So if I shut the door on my negative thought, it doesn't stop knocking, right? Yeah. And so I let them in. Okay, what do we need? What is it you want right now? How can I help you? And then I do what you talked about before. It says, right now I need to do this. Can you sit right here? Just sit here. I see you. I hear you. But I'm busy doing something else this time. And distracting, containing is another one, where I will take that thought and say, you know what, I've got to go to work or I'm going to go on a vacation and I'm just going to put you in this box. It's a pretty box. I'm going to put the lid on it. There's holes in it so you can see and breathe, but I'm going to put the lid on it and I'm going to sit you on the shelf, and then I'm not going to take you with me wherever it is I'm going. Right.
Yes.
Okay.
And don't they usually always show up at night too? Like you're sitting there in bed, you're laying down, and we're not talking about a negative intrusive thought. It just is an intrusive thought because it's not supposed to be there right now.
It just doesn't belong.
It doesn't belong in that moment. And then it just persists. Like, hey, think about me. Be aware of me. Like, be fearful. because you are going to forget about me, right?
Yeah.
And so then sometimes I like that of recognizing like, whoa, let's put a timer on that.
Yeah.
Like, just like Wendy talked about putting it in a box and putting it away, sometimes if I can like stamp it with a timer and say 8:00 in the morning, I'll take care of you.
We'll come back. We'll circle back.
And then I always have to write it down.
Yeah. So
right? Like write it down or put it somewhere so that I can be aware of it, and that can be helpful. But recognizing like intrusive thoughts don't all have to be bad. They can just be in the wrong place at the wrong time sometimes.
So what if I were listening to this and you two have amazing professional experience, and on behalf of everybody who's listening who maybe doesn't know, what are some examples of intrusive thoughts? What do they look like? If they're thinking, I don't know, is this intrusive thoughts? Like,
yes.
What do they look like?
Well, I think
how do you know if you're having one?
There's intrusive thoughts, like kind of like the ones that I talked about, where they're just in the wrong place at the wrong time, right? Or they kind of just are irritable, or there's like a little irritation behind them. Okay. They're not really necessarily all bad. They can be, but more of that irritability comes kind of with them. Then there's the negative intrusive thoughts. And so negative intrusive thoughts is more along the lines of holding up some sort of thing. I actually wrote it down. Let's go into it. It says, intrusive thoughts can be about anything, but negative intrusive thoughts are the ones that tend to be the most upsetting. These negative thoughts are often about topics that you find disgusting, disturbing, or scary. They may be violent, sexual, or otherwise go against your values. And this is by MedRx, which is kind of great. And so that kind of gives you a good idea of like some of those intrusive thoughts that can kind of really get in the way. Like postpartum. Postpartum can definitely have some intrusive thoughts, and they can be about anything, and they can even be scary. But I like to say that the negative intrusive thoughts sometimes take us to that deeper level of really hurting us.
So would you say that intrusive thoughts, these negative ones, would be anything that you're thinking that maybe is like cultivating shame, or that you are feeling, not just the ones that aren't supposed to be there, but a negative intrusive thought, if you're having it and thinking, I'm really bad for thinking this. Oh my gosh, I can't tell anyone. No one can know that I'm thinking this. This is so bad.
That's a really good way of describing it.
Okay.
Yep. So when it feels in the shame of I am bad.
But I also think it can be something, you're a student and you just start perseverating on your syllabus, and oh my gosh, semester's just started. I've got to get this, and it just keeps nagging at you, perseverating or ruminating. Just a cow chewing its cud over and over, and you can't think about your family or dinner or shopping because you're just so focused on that project you've got to get done. And so it can be just it doesn't always have to be shame-based or haunting or hurting. It can just be, I just can't get, the laundry just keeps plaguing me, or this job interview that I'm trying to get. And balance, we've just got to find balance. Is it getting in the way of our ability to function?
Yes.
And if it is, let's sit with it for a minute. Okay. And what can we do about it? How do we combat? So I always say that hamster on the hamster wheel just keeps spinning. And it's like, whoa, slow down. Let's step off the hamster wheel and just take a breath for a minute.
Yes, so that kind of gives you the difference between intrusive thoughts versus the negative intrusive thoughts. Harmful. But then you also have compulsive. Right? Yeah. Like and so I have a little bit of information here. It says that OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, is a common chronic and long-lasting disorder in which a person has uncontrollable reoccurring thoughts or obsessions and behaviors like compulsions that he or she feels the urge to repeat over and over, versus the difference between the really hard one and more distressing one, which is called primarily obsessional OCD. And this one has been called the most distressing and challenging forms of OCD. It says people with this form of OCD have distressing and unwanted thoughts pop into their head frequently, and the thoughts typically center on a fear that you may do something totally uncharacteristic of yourself, something potentially fatal to yourself or others. The thoughts quite likely are of an aggressive or sexual nature. And so if by any chance that you are, or any of our listeners are struggling with OCD or the obsessional OCD. This is something that you want to dive into a little bit further. Find someone that is OCD trained and certified that can really help you with those obsessive thoughts. And some of the things that we're going to talk about today can help with those. And so let's just dive into some of the examples, or not examples, but some of the tips and tricks that we kind of have that really can like be helpful in combating some of these intrusive and negative intrusive thoughts.
And like you've said, Brandie, this is by no means intended to be therapy. It's to just give you some ideas to, hadn't thought about it that way. And then, because there's a spectrum
There is.
of automatic negative thoughts. Some of them are just that, automatic negative thoughts, and we go about our day, we continue to function. And other automatic negative thoughts can become so intrusive and so consuming that we need to seek more intensive treatment to take care of them.
Yes, and understanding the difference. And understanding the difference and allowing yourself to be able to find the treatment. I think that it's not intentionally all our fault when we have some of these disorders that kind of plague us in certain ways. The key here is recognizing and understanding them. So if we have the educational background and the awareness that we are having those implode in our lives or intercede into some minimal way, just to seek for help. And I get all sorts of spectrums that come in my office. I get very simple compulsive, identifying like intrusive thoughts, and I can get some of the OCD ones that go clear up on the intensive spectrum of that. And all those, sometimes even as a therapist, I'll refer those out because I want to make sure that people are getting the best treatment and the best understanding with those things. So one of the things I wanted to start talking about is cognitive distortions. This is like some of the most, like, I'm so grateful for Google Images. They have like 100 different ways. If you don't like it this way, then there's like 500 other options on here. And there's some of them that have like 25 cognitive distortions. This
like I
one,
said, I have with 40.
Yeah, 40. 40.
I love that.
This one is just of 10. And if you're not able to view what I'm showing you today, we'll have Logan post this so you can see it. Or just go onto Google Images. Look, they have all sorts of fun ones on there that you can kind of take a look at. But some of the most popular ones, and maybe we can just dive into a couple of these, if each of us will just kind of want to pick some, is like the all or nothing thinking. I don't know what's going on, but I've been getting this one in my office quite a bit.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
It's like this black and white thinking. And it just gets to the point where they're like, I think so obsessively over here that everything else is wrong and no good, right? And then all of a sudden they have this enlightenment. And it's almost like they switch tides and all of a sudden they become white thinkers or like, completely on the opposite side. And then I'm like, what in the world? How do we just bypass gray in all of this and just go from one intensive thinking to the next, right?
I think it's important to know that it's sometimes just the way our brains work. I mean, someone with autism, their brain works a certain way. And if you know one person with autism, you know one person with autism. So it could be a whole spectrum of different ways the brain thinks, that concrete thinking. It doesn't make it bad or good, right or wrong. It's going to be the way your brain thinks, but being aware that that's how your brain thinks, then you can call yourself on it and say, no, this is my concrete thinking, my all or nothing, black and white. And then I can say, okay, wait, what's another way? Is there another way? And I don't have to be as rigid in it. If I can name it, I can tame it.
I love that. Yes. One of the other ones that I like to talk about a lot in my office is like the labels that we put on ourselves.
Oh, yeah.
Like I am it can be such a beautiful thing, an I am statement, because it can pose positivity, make us feel valuable in the world around us. But sometimes those can be really harmful and hurtful as well. And so recognizing like the difference between the two. And then what am I putting on myself? Like that label of, oh my gosh, you're such an idiot.
Yeah. Labeling is powerful, like for good or bad, for us or for others.
Yes.
However we're using it, it can be powerful.
And so watching like the names that I'm calling myself or that I'm labeling myself as, like I think it's also okay to recognize my limitations, that maybe I'm not a great sewer. like my mother, who's an expert seamstress. But I can say that, hey, I can sew a button, right? And so watching for the labels that we put on ourselves and the hurtful words. One of the other ones, jumping to conclusions, right? Like that one's a big one. It says on here that there are 2 key types of jumping to conclusions. There's the mind reading, where we're assuming, right? The assumptions that people don't like us, or the assumptions that they don't want to hang around us, or that, you know, we're not valuable to them. And then there's also the fortune telling, where we're predicting the future.
You're sure what's going to happen?
Yes, I am so sure that this is going to happen. And so therefore, I'm going to limit myself on the things that I do. And then also say the hurtful things against myself so I don't do or produce those things.
The one that jumps out to me so much, and it's probably because I live with 3 little people who do it all the time, which is disqualifying the positive. However, not exclusive to kids. Adults do this. I've done this. You look at your day, and your day is filled with probably 65-70% good things and happy and healthy things that have gone well. And then the one thing comes along that has not been great, and you hear the statement, "This is the worst day ever." Oh my gosh. That's what's said to me all the time. This is the worst day ever. And how often are we letting that type of thinking come in, though, where, oh, my day is ruined. Just going to have to end it at
becoming the
3
boss
p.m.
of you.
Yes.
That one negative comes in and becomes the boss of you, rather than you saying, just one thing.
Yeah.
We
This
made
is a
it
moment.
through.
Right.
Yeah.
Look at all
I'm
the others.
still staying the boss of me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I like the should statements, because if I'm in a burning building, I should get out, right? That's a healthy should. But a lot of times I'll say I should, or somebody will say, well, you should do it this way. And I stop and I say, are you shoulding on me?
Yeah.
And then we laugh, right? And if we laugh, our nervous system comes back into, okay, let me navigate through that. Yeah, maybe I don't need to do that. Maybe that's just an opinion or an assumption. So I love the shoulding. Am I shoulding on myself, or are you shoulding on me? And then, no, there's a fire. You should get out. Okay, we're out. You know what I mean? So just being able to ask yourself, that's just an automatic.
Cannot wait to use that. I'm so excited to say that to someone. Can't wait. It's going to be good.
Stop shitting on me.
Yeah.
I think also the magnification of catastrophization, like we catastrophize the situation. So like we spilt the milk, right? And it's like, now we're never going to be able to eat dinner ever again.
Yeah.
And I say dinner with milk because we eat cereal.
Love that.
Right? Like, oh my gosh, there was a friend at school and I dropped my bags all over the school and they laughed at me, right? So then the whole school must hate me.
Yeah.
The whole school.
Everyone.
It's going to be everywhere. Everyone's going to know and they're going to all hate me now. You know, or it's that inappropriately shrinking something to make it seem less important is on the opposite side.
Yeah.
So then when we have this other thing and we make it minimized and it's not that big of a deal. Oh, you did this really great thing. No, I didn't. No, I didn't. That was, I just do what anybody else would have done. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so if you want, there's a great, a ton of really great, what are they called? Cognitive distortions that you can look up online, go through them. Here's the power though. Don't you think, Wendy? Like, and Sarah, I think that it gets to the point sometimes I really like going back to what Wendy said about releasing the power these thoughts have on us. And that's kind of why our key theme today is the boss back, right? Bossing them back, making them powerless. Because if we can make them powerless, then we have all sorts of opportunities at our fingertips to destroy them or to understand them, to help them. Maybe they're not such a bad thing like Wendy says, but they're just something that maybe is in the wrong time at the wrong moment. Or they happen to be something that we just need to recognize and understand, like it's totally understandable that you feel this way or that you think that you're an idiot right now because of what you just did. But does that really mean that you are an idiot? Yeah. You know, like bringing that person back in to like kind of talk through that, you know, and like, and laughing about it. Like, I think it's just so funny, kind of like how we laugh at some of the things here today. like laughing at yourself and finding it funny. And I'm not saying, maybe I shouldn't say laugh at yourself, but laugh with yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that you can like pull that strength and power that thought has over you to make it small. There's this cute little book that I read the kids when they come in and they have those intrusive thoughts. The kid in this book is really struggling because he overhears on the television that his mom, or that there was an earthquake somewhere in the world. It wasn't even in his area, right? Okay. And so then he goes to bed and he's super scared. So what does he do? He puts all the pillows around him and he puts a helmet on and he's like, if there's an earthquake, I'm going to be ready, right? And a little egg appears under his bed. Oh. And it's a little dragon egg, right? And then he like takes the egg with him and he's like, okay, I'm going to go to school. But I don't want to take the bus because what if there's an earthquake and the bus falls into a hole? So I'm just going to walk to school. Right. So then he walks to school and he gets to school and then all the kids are making fun of him because he's wearing a helmet and he's doing really a little bit different, socially different things that the kids start kind of teasing him with. And he's like, oh, nobody likes me now. I need to just go home and never come back to school again. And you can see how, and the dragon breaks open his egg and gets bigger. And we start feeding that dragon inside us or those worried thoughts. And it starts taking control. And one day he's sitting there and he's reading a newspaper or reading a book. And the dragon is telling him like, hey, you need to be scared or you need to be fearful. And the boy is like, no, I think I'm okay. And he like breathed his first fiery breath and like incinerated the magazine, And then the kid was like, whoa, wait a second. It's really starting to control me. Right now, I've been feeding it this whole time and it's been getting bigger and bigger and bigger. I think sometimes we get to that place where we do that, where it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And before we know it, we have this huge dragon standing in front of us and it's a fire breather. Mm-hmm. And we're like, oh crap, what do we do now? And so he had to pull out his sword. He had to pull out all sorts of defensive equipment to save himself. And then it goes on this pathway of like bossing back the words, using those boss back words, which is like, you are not the boss of me. And how many times do we say that or think that? Or even like, hey, you might be really nice, dragon. But right now, the things that you're doing isn't really what I want in my life. So I need you to go sit in the corner. I need you to go sit in the corner. And sometimes if we say it like we're petting a kitten, that's not really helpful. Like, oh, I think maybe you should go sit in the corner now. Intrusive thought. Like, no, that's when I have to bring out like that biker chick Brandie inside me, where I'm like, go sit in the corner. Like, I like you, I'm not mad at you, but you need to sit in the corner right now. Like if we can pull out that part inside ourselves to really kick the trash and have that the boss back type of mentality, which could be really helpful in some of our thoughts.
And I think, you're touching on a really strong part that right here, this is Wendy Reiiman, my automatic normal part. I'm 61 years old. I run a general outpatient agency. I'm married. I have children. This is my automatic normal part. But sometimes I have this part that gets really sad over any number of things. Or this part that gets really scared about, oh my gosh, what are we going to do about this situation? And we have all these different parts of us. And it's those parts that can become bigger and more in control. And if we can just remember, wait, that's not me. That's not my automatic normal part. That's just a part of me that, number one, maybe as you said before, just had a baby and my hormones are all over the place, and I can name it so that I can recognize, okay, right now I'm being flooded with hormones that are causing all these different feelings in me, but my automatic normal part is aware of that. And now I can maintain the strength, but I can talk to these different parts, or I can seek help through professionals that can say this one part just keeps perseverating or keeps haunting me, or it's unintegrated into our nervous system. And if we stay in tune with our nervous system, then we know, okay, what do I need? Is it simply, oh, I need to go get a massage and calm things down? Or do I need to reach out to Brandie or Sarah or myself and get some professional help to help me walk through it, or to utilize other
tools. I'm in EMDR certified, so I use EMDR to help integrate unresolved traumas or stuck traumas in the body. So that's all part of the parts work that Brandie's talking about, that is really important to recognize. We've got the power to stay in control of.
Yes, internal family systems. It's so amazing. And the people who recognize this, I didn't even know about internal family systems when I was doing already parts work. I had no idea. Oh, yeah. And then all of a sudden I was aware of internal family or finding that part work. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm already doing that. Like that's, and it works. It works so well. And recognizing, and I think that it's also valuable to hear what Wendy said, because sometimes these things, these intrusive thoughts they're not just intrusive thoughts. They can have a backbone of PTSD. Yeah. And if that's the case, then we have some traumas that need to be worked out. And in that case, that's when Wendy pulls out her EMDR, or we just start doing some trauma work, which could be really helpful to integrate that in when working on something like this. And I kind of find those trauma parts tend to be when we really exaggerate. Like when we have this normal way of thinking and we go into this realm of over here or under emotionally stimulation. And like we tend to like really not being able to function in daily life. Usually there's some sort of backbone of PTSD or trauma that's there that kind of causes some sort of an issue. And working through that can be really helpful. So I love that. I love how Wendy talks about, what is the word? I use awareness. I call it awareness, where we open our eyes. She uses name it and tame it. Because if you name it and you can see it and you can put a name on it, then you can do something about it. And I think that is such a really important thing to do, as well as like recognizing when we're there, when we know that we have an intrusive thought there, then we can do something about it. And then that goes into like the sacrifice. What do I want to do about it? Right? Because there are some things that I am willing to do stuff about it, and there's stuff that I'm not. So if I can like categorize what I am willing to do about it, because I'm aware, my eyes are open, and I am like present in the here and now, then I can like go through the motions of doing that thing that I need to do to get rid of that thought, or even just to put it over there, not get rid of it, but put it in the place that I need to put it and say, hey, sit in the corner right now until I figure out what to do with you, or put it in a box like Wendy talked about on a shelf somewhere. And so those can be super helpful things.
Talking about it. We know when we suppress, we're releasing the cortisols and the stress hormones until eventually we explode. And then our families look at us like, whoa, what? Where did this come from? We don't need milk with cereal. We'll eat it dry, right? Yeah. Something very simple. And so, but when we express, we release more of the serotonin, we walk away from a sister or a girlfriend or somebody, and we're just, that felt good. I feel much better. Thanks for talking to me, because that expression is, it kind of gets it out of our head and, kind of just normalize it.
Yeah, it's just not so big deal.
Kind of tames it a little bit.
Yeah, I love the fact of like sharing it, keeping it secret, I think is what harbors infestation, right? Yeah. But if you know about it, then you can pull out all sorts of tips and tricks to getting rid of it. And talking about it with a friend, that is safe to do so. Like sometimes there are not safe people to talk about certain things with, but recognizing who your safe person is and talking about those things with them could be really helpful. One of the things that I wanted to talk about today is like those intrusive thoughts when like going on an airplane, right? Or anywhere where we're unaware of how or what is happening. Like I have a friend that has a little bit more of a sensitivity towards her body movements. So any sort of movements in her body causes her to panic just a little bit. So going in an airplane and feeling that dip down, for us it might be like a woo, but for her it's like the plane is going down, right? It feels just more intenseful. And so we've set up some rules for her, such as like, I look around me and I see how other people are responding. And then I take that on for me. If people are not panicked around me, then I can say, okay, their body response system, which I register as being more of a normal response system, unlike mine, then I can take that as truth. And so setting up rules for yourself, sometimes setting up a series of questions for yourself, like what's the reality of the situation? What's the worst thing that can happen? Like, will I care about this in 3 minutes, 3 months, 3 years, which I've heard Sarah say before in session, which I think is such a valuable pose. But those series of questions, if you can set those rules up that you ask yourself those questions anytime this intrusive thought comes in, and it's your friend, because you know it always comes up at a certain time in a certain place, then that can be super helpful, which is good. What about, like, have you guys ever used, like, the prosecutor and defender? Like, you put your thoughts on trial, like, go to court, and you, like, defend. You have, like, this side of you that kind of defends the thought, and then the side that kind of prosecutes it, and then it kind of gives you the ability for yourself to be, like, the judge.
Yes. Well, it gives you the opportunity to just explore, examining why it's there, what it's doing, and again, keeping in mind what you said at the very beginning, if we have these natural negative minds, not just diving in and assuming, oh, this thought that I have is wrong or bad or inconvenient, whatever it is, that judge and prosecutor, you know, those things, going through that process can give you the opportunity to really stop and say, is this a thought that I want or it's not? Because if it is the first time that it's coming into your mind, then you kind of think through that process, how you want to categorize it, what do I want to do next? Instead of just saying, this is bad, I don't want it.
Yes, I like that.
Yeah.
One of the other ones on my list here, I made a list of all sorts of tips and tricks that we could share with you today, is just, would I say this about somebody else? Like, kind of putting that in there as one of those key thoughts too, of like, I very easily say those negative things about myself, or I can use those intrusive thoughts for myself. But if someone else was to say that intrusive thought to me, how would I respond to that? And then maybe taking that on, that could be helpful. And this could be a little bit questionable depending on the intrusive thought, right? Like, if you have an intrusive thought that's like, I am fearful of hurting somebody, right? And so then that intrusive thought, to share that with somebody, could get a little bit sticky. But instead, to just recognize that the more simple thoughts, you know, this thought, more of those negative ones about yourself, the ones that not liking yourself, or, you know, maybe some basic fears, thoughts, which
I think it's important to remember too, that our brains are essentially computers, data in, data out.
so
and
true.
So the more negativity we put in, the more negativity that is going to come out. And if we can reframe that, if we can say, okay, wait, what's another way? Dr. Aaron Beck is another one, cognitive behavioral therapy, who's done so much research on helping us recognize that the way we think affects the way we feel, which affects the way we behave. And when we behave a certain way over and over and over, it becomes a habit, or it becomes a pattern. So if we find ourselves in, oh, I'm just so sick and tired of being so toxic, or being in a toxic environment or a toxic relationship. Okay, what do I need to do to break the habit? How can I reframe the thought? What's another way, so that I can reframe my thoughts or my feelings, or my thoughts reframe my feelings, which reframe my behaviors, and it becomes just basically an emotional physical therapy appointment that you have on a regular basis. What's another way?
I love that. I think that is such a beautiful thing to recognize. And let's also dive into the fact that sometimes our negative intrusive thoughts, or even the obsessive compulsive ones, let's dive into those, because we probably have, and I would love to do a whole series or another podcast on postpartum, but there are times when we have those fears, just like they talked about in here, and I'm going to make a couple of very bold statements, but physical aggression, sexually aggressive towards somebody else, or becoming sexual towards somebody else, or hurting our babies or our children or people around us, or even ourselves, right? I read a story today about a mother or a lady who said that she has a big issue seeing knives because she's so fearful of that knife. She's so fearful that that knife will hurt her. So instead, she's hurrying and cutting up her vegetables for dinner, because she's so scared that if she waits too long, something might happen where she hurts herself with that knife, like intentionally, right? And so sometimes I like to go into the questioning of, but do you want to? And that's the first question that I like to ask, Postpartum is a big one where we have that fear of hurting our baby or the thoughts around it. And so if I can go into the thought of first, number one, do I want to?
Right.
And if I do, then this is where I probably should get some help somewhere. I need to call a friend to come in and watch the baby. I need to probably schedule that appointment to go see my therapist, talk to my doctor about it. Your loved ones around you. Don't stay silent, because silent can be deadly, right? And so making sure that you get the help that you need. But if the answer is no, I don't want to, then my next question goes into, then what's going to make me? What's going to make me? Do I have control over my body at this moment? Because we become fearful that something is going to come over our body and force us to do it. And this is that part where we have to be very clear of our obsession, of our thoughts in that, and say, that's not necessarily true. I feel in control of my body right now. And if I feel in control of my body, then okay, good. I can put a check mark next to that one that I'm in control right now. And now, then I have to go into the pathway of, this one's rough, but like forgiving yourself for having those thoughts. Right? Because that shame can set in, like we talked about, and we can feel really bad. And then once we can work on those, which there's all sorts of techniques to do that, then we have to say, okay, can I allow this now to create space to let this go? This is just a really intensive, compulsive, intrusive thought, or an intrusive thought, right? And so therefore, if this is just an intrusive thought and nothing is compulsively making me do it because I have full control over my body right now, then we're in a good place. And therefore, things are good and okay. And it's like a conveyor belt. Just as it passes through, the thought comes to your mind, and you say, add in those two questions. Do I want to? Am I in charge of myself? And then it just let it go on. Create space for it just to go somewhere else. And so then finding ways to like love yourself through this, and then naming it and taming it, like Wendy says, where it's like, oh, that's a postpartum thought.
All the words, like taming it, and what you talked about, like if there's negativity in and the negativity out, and the imagery that keeps coming up to me, and I don't know if y'all heard this. Is it an allegory? I don't know. Parable? Something? Very old story, but just about the two wolves inside. Okay. And if they're fighting, which one wins? It's the one that we feed. If there's light and there's dark, I think that's the original. But I mean, you could label them whatever you want to say in this, but if we have forces inside of us that are fighting for that attention, the ones that are going to win are the ones that we give attention to and we feed.
Yes, and we let them have the power and the control over us. And so by naming it and taming it, by doing all these other things, we've given you about, 20 different tips and tricks on how to combat some of those intrusive thoughts. If you want more information on this, it's all over the internet. There's all sorts of great places to look at. A lot of scholarly resources that are available. Look into some of your cognitive behavioral therapies, even your emotionally focused ones, the part work with internal family systems, like asking more questions to people around you. Have you ever had these thoughts? If we can diminish the thought and the power that it has over us, then it can do something really great for us, because then we can laugh about it a little. We can enjoy our day just a little bit. We can categorize it and put it in that place that says, oh, it's just an intrusive thought. We all have them. I'm not a bad person for having them. Yeah. It's a normal thing to have. And if it's abnormal, then okay, I'll get some help, right? And that's okay. It's that love for self. So I think that today we have all of these opportunities at our fingertips. So again, I'm so grateful for you guys coming and joining me today. I think that we had like a goldmine. There was things that I even learned, and I was like, yeah, I forgot Wendy said, name it and tame it. And I hear her say it all the time. But that is such a beautiful concept. And so what are your concepts you heard today? What are the concepts you're going to take out of this? And what are the concepts that are going to work for you? Because there might be some in here that might not work for you, and that's okay. But finding those, letting those win, that can be a hard thing too, is letting them win, right? Letting them win and inserting them into your everyday living life. If you are aware, if your eyes are opened, and you can like say the name of what it is that's there, like this is an intrusive thought, then don't be afraid of bossing it back or telling it where to go. Be kind to it. It's a part of you, right? We don't have to be so angry at it, but maybe sometimes we do, and that's okay too. But work through these things. And if not, then reach out and find a therapist who can help you, or a really great trusted friend. Thanks for joining us today. We're super happy that you're here with us. If you would like to view this, we are on YouTube. You can watch it. We're so much funner in person.
That's true.
But if not, that's okay too. We're happy you joined us today, and we hope to see you next time. Thanks for joining in.